Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 7 of Wednesday. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So the first thing we have at the opening is, there was a funeral and everything, and for a second I had to be like, wait, who died? I was like, what happened? I was like, is this the future and we're missing some context or something? It's like, no, idiot, I forgot. Obviously the mayor died last episode, so obviously for Wednesday it's like, right there, she has all the pieces, she just hasn't been able to line them up necessarily. So there's a long list of suspects and she's got to work out like who's responsible, who's behind all of this. And lo and behold, her favorite uncle steps in. Like, the moment she saw someone in the coat and the hat run away from her, I was like, it's got to be Uncle Fester, isn't it? And it totally was. I actually didn't look at the end. I should have. I forgot to look at the credits. But that had to be Fred Armisen, right? It had to be. It kind of looked like him. Obviously, I don't think I've ever seen him, like, obviously with, like, a shaved head or whatever. But I'm like, that has to be him, right? Because, I'm visualizing. I was like, that. I should have looked at the credits of this episode. I totally forgot I was waiting to do that. But that looked like that was Fred Armisen. It sounded like it was him. So I was like, I would have never thought him as Uncle Fester. That's so interesting. If that is him, and I could be completely crazy. Also, I love that he basically has electricity powers, which is so interesting. Because I was like, yeah, I know, like, Fester's always had this thing with electricity, but being able to summon it. But I guess it's from, like, all the electroshock therapy he's went through. Like, maybe he's had it so many times that he's literally got a ton of, like, he's like a battery now with a ton of electricity running through his veins. So, and what I think is such a neat little detail is the only time you've ever seen Wednesday smile like that the entire series so far is seeing her Uncle Fester, because it's like, yeah, like, I guess it's like, right, I guess she finds a lot of commonality with Fester, because she even said it herself that, like, Fester is the black sheep of the family despite how weird her family is. There was also this interesting line when she was referencing, like, hey, you can stay here. This is a friend of mine's place. And she's like, oh, a friend of yours? Oh, he must be, poor guy, must be heading for the body bag. And you see this look on Wednesday's face, like that statement cut deep, because he is, like, potentially on death's door. And especially because she feels responsibility for what happened to him too, so that it cuts deep. Obviously, she didn't say anything to Fester and just kind of kept it moving, but that remark really kind of, like, bothered her, but she didn't say anything about it. So obviously he needs to kind of lay low a little bit. Apparently he never attended Nevermore, but he would, show up from time to time to secretly attack Gomez, which I was like, yeah, that is a thing, isn't it? Like, wouldn't they constantly get into, like, fencing matches and stuff like that? Wasn't that kind of like that? Isn't there that, because their shtick is kind of almost like Pugsley and Wednesday. Mainly Wednesday always gets the better of Pugsley. I don't think it's ever quite on the opposite. I guess it's more like Cain and Abel, and she always ends up being Cain and he's always Abel in that role. What the hell was I watching recently that brought up Cain and Abel, but they talked about it like, nah, Cain killed Abel, Abel came back and killed Cain. It was just a whole cycle. I don't remember what I was watching recently that tackled that very subject. I'm trying to remember what it was off the top of my head. Oh, Reggie the Vampire. I was like, something this week, like, really tackled that. And I was like, yeah, Reggie the Vampire. Okay, I was trying to remember. But yeah, in the more traditional sense, I do believe she's like the Cain and Abel. But yeah, like, Gomez and Fester have always kind of had that shtick too. And it's just like, right, Fester would show up trying to attack Gomez, and I guess it just never worked out. So he's laying low at the school, just popping in and out and just disappearing because he's actually wanted because of a local bank robbery. And he also stole, like, some, like, it was some motorcycle that he stole. He stole some bike where it's like some Dalmatian thing. It's literally got like a Dalmatian coating to it. For whatever. It's like, yeah, like, it's like, oh, pick something less conspicuous. And it's like, why? Where's the fun in that? Like, they are kind of like that family's weird, but I feel like him and Wednesday are the biggest rebel rousers of the family. But nevertheless, Wednesday ends up finding out about the monster that she's been hunting. Her uncle's the one that gave her the name Hyde, because she's looked in every book about it, but it's like, right, the founder of Nevermore was a Faulkner, and it's like this person had a diary which he ended up seeing because like Gomez had locked him in there. Like one time he stumbled upon Gomez and Morticia doing their thing back in the day, so he got locked in there. He found the book in a safe, and they go down there to go check that out. And I love that Thing and Fester have beef because of a previous job that went sideways. It's like, right, you said you were going to do it in like 10 seconds. 5 minutes later, we're still there. And once again, I love just seeing Thing just jump out of nowhere and starts choking him. I love that. And then kind of had one finger in his mouth, and she made them stop. And so he gave Fester a wet willy. Just once again, that electricity thing is just so dope that he just brings it up out of nowhere and shocks Thing. But Thing ends up cracking the safe, and I do love that if you look at the way Thing moved, it was almost like a little bit of a bow or a curtsy, but ultimately they find the page where the hide is, and we find out, yes, it's still that in-between lane of, well, is the hide is self-aware or not? Now, this kind of gets into that complicated territory, because I believe maybe in the beginning, no, but I think there is some self-awareness just with some of the stuff that I brought up last episode, like that it didn't like pan out, didn't like make sense. So I think because of last episode, I do believe there is some self-awareness, or maybe it's just like a no, like you're so much in a trance that like it's part of like you don't know what you're doing because you're being controlled. Because apparently the hide situation, it's about whoever frees the hide and kind of lets it know about what it is ends up becoming its master, becomes indebted to them. So now Wednesday realizes she's after not one killer, but two, the hide and its master. So and all her money has been on Xavier the entire time. She refuses to kind of buckle. Like, she believes it's Xavier, found him down below, and still is super suspicious of him. For him, it irritates him so much. Because he's like, right, because for her, it's like, if I keep lining up all the times that the hide showed up, you were always in the area. Except for one of those situations, there's another person that has been involved in all those situations as well. There was one situation where they weren't there with you to my recollection, that it showed up. But any other instance, this other person, which, I've already thrown it out there, my theory about it being Tyler. We found out in this episode it is, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, like, Tyler was in, like, with the exception of the wood situation where it was raining after she had her first vision of, like, waking up inside, where she, inside that fort and was outside, it was raining, and the footprints disappeared. Like, we saw that scene again with Xavier. That's the one time Tyler wasn't around. But once again, would he have really had time to transform and come back and just be like, oh, hey, I'm here? I don't know. It does, because my biggest thing, too, was like, well, you'd have to have clothes, and he wasn't soaking wet. I think that should have been, like, clear enough then. It's like, yeah, he wasn't soaking wet. He wouldn't have had time to get clothes and, be dry. Because, once again, we don't know what the clothes situation is like. Is it kind of like a shape-shifting thing of, like, right, the clothes change when you shape-shift, just kind of like in her case. So, would the hide still keep their clothes? And it turns out, no, they don't. They are butt naked when they transform back into a human. So it's like, yeah, like Xavier should have from the very beginning kind of been a no. But once again, it's that thing of, like Morticia said, like in the first episode, sometimes Wednesday can't get out of her own way. She thinks she's so smart. She thinks she's got ahead, but she's missing some of the smaller details. That's always the thing. What always gets people tripped up? The fine print. Y'all never read the fine print, and she's so focused on the big details and she thinks she's getting the small details, but there's other little small details that's not quite clicking. So but it's because she's also, it's that thing of, oh God, I always forget the term for it, but basically it's like when you get stuck in your own cycle of, oh, I found this information that already supports the theory that I always was thinking. Like it's that, it's something biased. It's a certain type of bias where you, will look at all evidence, but only the evidence that is consistent with what you're already thinking. So it feeds into your position more and more. You're kind of ignoring all the other evidence, whether she's doing that on purpose, whether she's doing that subconsciously, so. Especially because she was following Xavier at one point later on in the episode, and she found him with Dr. Kinbot, which is like, okay, she seems like the likely suspect, and she tried to tell Principal Weems about it, but Kinbot's there and it's like, oh, well, let's try hypnosis, because it's like, right, she's a therapist, hypnosis, it'd be kind of a, something in her back pocket, which would be part of this whole hide situation, as I kind of posited last episode as well. So Wednesday I guess I was like, is she going to use the therapy session as an opportunity, or is she just going to use that time in between therapy sessions to build up her evidence? Because to be fair, there was, now in retrospect, the evidence was there. I mean, if you have your subtitles on, you can still hear it, but when Xavier was with Kinbot, he said, like, I had a dream that you died. And she's like, get in the car. But Wednesday was so far away, she couldn't hear it. We as the audience could. Or maybe it's kind of interpreted as like I had a dream, and but it's like, yeah, that comes full circle later on, because Xavier has a painting of her with claw marks across her face. So it's like, yeah, because I think Wednesday still doesn't realize, like, once again, she knows that his father's a seer, but I think she nor him realize, because I think how it's manifesting itself is so different from Wednesday's circumstances and his father's circumstances, that basically his seeing, his visions of the future, that's why he's like, yeah, I dreamt of this like a couple days ago, because he's getting visions of the future, because he would eventually show up at the Gates residence to help Wednesday, Tyler, and Enid. So it's that whole spiel. So it's like, right, he's seeing the future, whereas Wednesday is seeing the past and she's seeing the future and the past. So maybe, but I think it's because his is manifesting in a different way like that. He can't really turn to anyone, because I don't think it works like that for his dad, nor does it work like that with his Wednesday either. But once again, there is the conversation of you're only seeing one side of the situation, so you can't 100% count on the visions. Just like it was actually him that said that earlier, because he was like, Xavier said that because that's kind of like his father's perspective on things. Because the visions can be unreliable, because they only give you one side of things and not the full picture. So maybe it's in truth, like maybe Wednesday can get part of it, and then Xavier can get the other part of it. Maybe it's kind of like the two of them together, like kind of gets a fuller picture. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but yeah. Because it turns out he was seeing Kinbot because his father was like, right, my son has issues, and it could be an issue, because he comes from a famous father, and it's like, right, I don't want that to be anything that could publicly like harm my image, so I need my son to see a therapist to work on whatever shit he's got to be dealing with. So, because once again, there is the whole element of it is triggered by something traumatic, and once again, we know there's some trauma or something that has got to be associated with his mom, with Tyler's mom. Because we still don't know what that's about, and because it is something bad enough that Sheriff Galpin doesn't want to talk about it, that doesn't even want to broach the conversation of his wife or Tyler's mom. So it must be pretty bad. But the moment Wednesday ended up ultimately confronting Kinbot, I was like, yeah, it's not her then. Like, because interestingly enough, she got help from Bianca and Leon. I was not calling him Leon. It's Lucas. And it's like, right, his dad did die, and he found it, like, I guess he figured he can turn to Wednesday, or either he turned to Bianca, and Bianca's like, well, someone murdered your dad, so, we might as well turn to, like, the only, like, detective we can really count on, because Wednesday's made a lot more progress than Sheriff Galpin has, so it's like, right, we all know how weird and freaky she is, but she is really good at figuring this out. So, it turns out the Gates property belonged to someone 90. It was a 90-year-old candy heiress who mysteriously died, left everything to basically Laurel Gates was using an anagrammed name to kind of hide her identity. But it's like the whole thing of like, right, that she supposedly drowned like 31 years ago or something like that, but still nobody was ever discovered. So it's like, right. And then they said what was essentially the crucial line I should have paid attention to, but Lucas says the line of, well, my dad must have recognized her. It wasn't till, because, jumping ahead a little bit, we find out Kinbot is not the, like I said, the moment, like, Wednesday confronted her, I was like, it's not her. I was like, it has to be Thornhill then. Once again, I'm kind of going back and forth. When it comes to a mystery, I can never stick to my own guns. I mean, my first theory was like, oh man, because it's Christina Ricci, it's like, oh my god, she's gonna die and that's gonna suck. And it's like, oh, well, she's been around, but then I start shifting to be like, oh, she's gonna be the main bad guy, isn't she? To some, yeah, to all extent, it seems like she is. So, what made me go like, right, I should have listened to myself was what I said, that Lucas line of, my dad must have recognized her. A couple episodes ago, Walker was in the Waterhaven and he was like, hey, don't I know you? And then Thornhill was like, oh yeah, like I get blah, 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 blah in the morning and I see you here all the time, yada, yada, yada. And she came up with some lame excuse and Walker was like, yeah, that's exactly it. I think I commented it on the time, but I kind of just like, just kind of brushed it aside later. I feel like I was like, oh, that's interesting, because now in retrospect, it's like she was lying through her teeth. He recognized her as Laurel, because I kept being like, oh, Kinbot is a blonde, because my thought was like, oh, maybe Thornhill dyed her hair or something like that, yada, 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 right? So it's like, once again, I should have stuck to my guns when I had it thought out, because even last episode, I was like, maybe Thornhill still is somewhere in the middle of all of this. It's like, no, Kinbot wasn't doing anything wrong. The problem, well, because it makes you wonder, I guess maybe Thornhill, well, I guess that's also the parallel too, because Thornhill is good with plants. She talked, if you go back, think back to some of like the classes with like the plants and stuff, she talked about like how to handle the plants and stuff like that, the kind of attention that they need and such. And it's like, right, she probably took a lot of those elements and applied them to Tyler. Or it could just be like hey, maybe she was in therapy at some point in time herself, and she's utilizing what was used to help her, and now she's making it applicable to Tyler. Does make you wonder how did those two cross paths? Not unless we find out that Thornhill was one of Kinbot's clients too, and that's how they bumped into each other in the first place. I don't know. Once again, like, how does she know about the Nightshade stuff? It's like, well, not less, because I'm trying to remember, her brother because her brother was a normie, so he couldn't have been a part of that. So it's like, how does she know about the Nightshade? Well, to be fair, she's been here a year, so she's probably been investigating stuff. So she probably, just like Wednesday, figured out the trick to it. I mean, it's like, yeah, you just snap your fingers twice. She like figured out the riddle. So she probably found out about it some time ago and now was like, probably doing everything she can to maybe cover her tracks or find all the stuff she needs to resurrect Crackstone is probably all there, and she was trying to like just secretly, so because we have yet to circle back to her going to the Nightshade's like secret lair place. So I think that's had to be it. She had to be gathering information on the book, on all of that from those books in there. Because it turns out Weems known from the very beginning that this was a hide and that someone was controlling it. But the reason she didn't say anything to the sheriff is because, once again, she's trying to protect Nevermore and she's like, and that includes you, Miss Adams. Like, everything I've done has been for that purpose. Because if I told him, hey, there's a monster here, it would have turned into a witch hunt. Because we don't know who the hide is, and that would have turned, it would have gotten nasty. And for her, it's like, that would have been the end of Nevermore. So it is. The road to hell is paved with good intentions type of situations, and the ends justify the means, as I've talked about in a previous episode. So the Tyler situation's even sadder because they're dating everything. He kind of convinced her to go on a date with him and everything. And the fact is that he set up that whole thing. He's like, "What? You never been on a date in a crypt or whatever?" And it's like, yes, he was doing everything right. Even in fact, he's like, "Oh, I got a scary movie." I was like, "Is it going to be an actual scary movie, or is it a movie that Wednesday's going to think is scary?" And the movie ended up being Legally Blonde, and she was like, "Oh my god, that was so torturous." Thank you. And I was like, yeah, she would really like that. Like he kind of nailed exactly what she would want. But he had talked about it repeatedly, like, yeah, I want to be more than friends. I want us to be more. And she's like, I'll stomp on your heart. And he's like, yes, you can try and push me away, but it's not going to work. And before they could kiss, sadly, his dad interrupted. He's like, I'm going to pretend I didn't see it. It's just like, get out of here. So he's like, geez Louise. Because they're looking for Fester's motorcycle. So there's also the sad situation that Wednesday had returned home and found Thing stabbed into the wall. Because she had found, really quickly, Enid's nail polisher. It never crossed my mind until like she put it down in front of Thing. I was like, right, it's supposed to be silver nail polish. I was like, that's ironic because once again, werewolves and silver. I was like, that didn't even correlate across my mind until she put the nail polish down in front of Thing. But like, yeah, he was stabbed, and I was like, there's no way they're gonna kill Thing. And like, luckily, he kept zapping. Fester kept zapping Thing, and luckily he was resuscitated. He didn't see the assailant because they were like cowards and attacked from behind. It's like, poor guy, that sucked. Because obviously for Wednesday, like, this is the first time she was shedding tears since losing her scorpion, like, all those years ago. Because it's like, yeah, Thing isn't just a pet. He is family, and she was close to losing him. He's been her cohort and compatriot throughout all of this season, so... And obviously just, like, her upbringing and everything. But luckily he's okay, so that's nice. Really quickly, was that... Okay, so the diary was behind a picture of... What was it? Iggy? Who was... Oh, God. The person who... I said their name earlier in the episode. I'm blanking on it now. They're the person behind Nevermore and stuff like that. And Iggy was like their right-hand person. And... It's like, yeah, it was behind a picture of Iggy It, which I was like, whoa. So it's like, is Iggy It a direct ancestor to Cousin It? Because I kept being like, yeah, we're getting Fester, but we still haven't seen Cousin It, so maybe Cousin It's not in town or something. I'm like, what's up with that? Because I was like, because I was about to say, not less Iggy It and Cousin It are the same, but I'm like, I don't think they are. I think that probably has to be a more direct ancestor to, Cousin It, because I don't remember much about Cousin It's circumstances in the Addams Family lore. I just remember like the whole like it speaks like a certain it speaks like a language that only like the Addams seem to understand, So that's about all I really because I did this. I think in my teaser trailer discussion, I think I talked about the fact is I confuse Thing and Cousin It a lot, like name wise, because I thought Cousin It was Thing, and Thing was Cousin It. I think I always conflated those two. There's also the whole I brought it up earlier, but Enid, obviously everything between her and Wednesday, like obviously she kept making excuses to come back by because she did miss Wednesday and she wanted to see if Wednesday actually missed her too, but Wednesday's too stubborn to admit that she actually cared, and Thing tried to get her to like make up with Enid, but she refused to because she's like, yeah, she saw friendship as a weakness, and eventually Enid came back because she found out about what happened to Thing. So it's like, yeah, Thing, well, he missed you. So it's like, right, let's kind of take this partnership in stride. It's like, because for Enid's perspective, it's like, right, we work. We shouldn't work, but we do work. So, it's like, yeah, me and Yoko were fine, but there had to be like some boundaries set up and stuff. But yeah, I thought that was really, really sweet. I'm glad that it's like, right, she got her friend back, whether or not, because even Thornhill was like, right, you can't admit the fact is you actually miss her. And it's like, she does, Because once again, it's just, she doesn't want to admit attachment. But it's like, yeah, and even she's like, right, I've seen how much she's changing. She's like, oh, don't worry, it's the tiniest, tiny spark. But an average person can't see it. But me, as a trained professional, I've noticed. Because, once again, she's seen something in Wednesday that she sees in herself. And I'm so curious what that is. What is it that she's seen in herself that she feels like, oh, we're kind of in this together? I don't know what's really kind of behind all that. If she is, once again, there could be a last minute twist of, it seems like it's Thornhill, but it's not. It's like, it feels like it's gotta be. Not unless she's got some other secret up her sleeve, but it's like, yeah. Why do you feel like there's such commonality between you if your whole shtick is about destroying Nevermore? Once again, getting revenge for your family. Or it could be maybe on some level she's trying to fight against what her family wants. And I don't know. Because it seems like she's aiming more so for what her family wants, but it could be like no, I don't want to give in to my family. This is supposed to be my fresh start, maybe very much like Bianca. And I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a last minute twist, but maybe there's not. I once again, see what I mean? Mysteries, I keep second guessing myself all the time, and I'm just not 100% sure what to believe or what to think, so. Poor Xavier, well, obviously, I'm about to say Kimbot got the worst of the deal because she ended up getting super murdered. But yeah, Xavier got framed. It's like, yeah, look at this orgy of evidence being like, oh, here's souvenirs from every person. And Xavier's like, oh, he thinks Wednesday's framing him. But it's like, no, it was, once again, it's all confirming what she already believed. So she's not looking deeper like she should. Then like the whole her and Tyler thing, because she's reevaluating a lot of stuff and she ends up kissing Tyler. And you're like, man, that's such a bummer, because she immediately has a vision and she's like, cool. The first boy I end up kissing end up being kind of a serial killing monster. And she's like, it seems like I have a type. It's like, yeah. So now what she's going to do about that, I guess she's going to try and get Gilpin to because telling Gilpin that his son is the Hyde monster probably won't go over well. And it's like, right, how do you have to get Xavier out of lockup and everything? So I don't know. That's going to be that's not going to be easy to do. That's not going to work out the way she probably hopes it will. I don't know if Fester's going to be in the next episode or not, because he is going to look after Thing until he's like, yeah, the next morning I'm about. So he might still be around by then to kind of still potentially help out, but he might be going, so he might not be in the next episode. The next episode is going to be the season finale, so it's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see how the season wraps up and how this all ultimately ends up playing out. Kind of finding out, the true, finally piecing everything fully together, kind of fully understanding the motivations, fully understanding our bad guy stories on both the Hyde front, because once again, what trauma and traumatic thing is triggering all of that for Tyler. I'd posited that early too, because it's like, right, he is the normie and his dad kind of has issues with outcasts. So the fact is, for his son to end up being, a Hyde, I think that's why I kind of thought it seemed like Tyler was a pretty good candidate from the beginning. But also, if it ends up being, and I keep saying if now because I was so certain before, but like I said, stuff just makes me second guess, because I'm like, there might be a last second twist or something that I didn't see coming. I'm thinking of Thornhill again. That's where and going into the season finale, that's where I am. As you can tell, I'm a flip-flopper, so I probably should stick to my guns, but I'll still leave enough room open to be like, maybe it's not Thornhill, maybe she's always been the red herring. I mean, she literally has red hair, so it'd be a very interesting play to be like, yeah. Plus, once again, it's Christina Ricci, so you'd be like, oh, they'd have to be setting her up to be some severe role in this in that regard. It's like, no, it might just be a thing of she might end up dead at the end of the season. Might still be what I thought. She might end up dying, end up getting murdered, but, maybe it's going to take longer in the season than I thought it would, and it will be under very different circumstances, maybe. So, once again, just kind of throwing all that out there. We'll ultimately have to wait to see, like I said, where the season finale ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.